Alright, what's up guys? So today I think we're finally going to talk a little bit of controllers on the Moto between the Fardriver and the Flipsky. So I figured what better way to talk about it than going for a little cruise with some cameras and talking about it. So looks like we're definitely going to get some rain. I'm not going to go too far from home. It's chilly out, just in the 40s today. Alright guys, so Flipsky or Fardriver, and specifically we're talking the Flipsky 200 Pro alongside with the Fardriver 72450. Now, I did have Kelly alongside in this little comparison, and it's pretty much just failed out of the race. It's not really worth my time testing on anything. It doesn't really want to run with the motors as well. So, it's eliminated. I love Kelly's to death. I've ran them for 4 or 5 years now. They just got to get their stuff together. So I've been telling them we'll see if they do down the road, but for right now they are eliminated. Alright, so I've been running the Fardriver on the B1 for a while, and then I changed it to the Flipsky. So I kind of did a good comparison, tried to do some of the same laps, tried to do some of, see how far I can get, and just kind of give some basic tests. So I made kind of a handful of things that I'm concerned about when it comes to these more advanced controllers over like a Vivor that's little, just plug in and run it. So I gave it as we want to rate it on install, auto learning, tuning, user-friendly being the app, our throttle response, overall feel of riding, our torque and our power, top speed, and then our battery life or power consumption, and then everything in general. So that's pretty much a 10 scale thing. We'll do 1 to 10 of those, kind of what I've done. We'll go over that in a bit, but we'll kind of dive into each one of those a little bit in between each controller, plus and minuses. So starting off with talking about the Fardriver, I think the Fardriver is a great option. I think the Fardriver and the Flipsky is a great option. This is right now basic to the Moto B1 with the motor that comes in the rolling chassis with that. So that's what I've basically tested both controllers in to come up with a little conclusion video like this. And you know, this is just kind of my input. This is personally from my opinion. You know, it's opinion based. Some of the tuning is thanks to Brandon, EMX Brandon on YouTube and other social media if you follow him, and Jordan with eForce, Jordan Davis. So shout out to those guys. Thank you guys for always being there to tune, along with Jeremy from Charged Up. So between those three guys, they really helped me with a lot of these different controller tunings. I've ran Kelly forever, and like I said, we're just over it. So like I said, this is going to be just specific to this motor, but we are going to test it between a handful of motors, being the KR V5 from Kunray, a new motor we have in the mail, still coming. And then we have the My 1020 motors we'll test with, along with the FW11, and then of course the Moto motor in this right now. So we'll go through all of those and really try to dial in each one as we go on between the Flipsky and the Fardriver, and then we'll have our EMF sets where you guys will be able to pick it out. But for now, we'll probably just have wire harnesses. You'll be available to buy the wire harness, and then our voltmeters and stuff will just plug into it or whatever. So we've been doing that a little bit with some customers, not on the website yet. Let me know what you guys think. All right, so when we're talking about the Fardriver, I'm going to go ahead and say I think the Fardriver is more of a user-friendly option over the Flipsky in general, and we start to look at the final results of that. So we'll dive into each one a little bit, but I'm going to start off and say tuning and everything. I think the Fardriver is going to be easier for everyone right off the bat. The Flipsky is really not too much more difficult, just a little more hard to navigate through the settings on the Bluetooth app, I would say. So we'll try to get all those videos dialed in as well. All right, so as far as install goes on the Moto for both the controllers, I think they're pretty equal, especially if you have EMX Brandon's mounts, which we will have hopefully in stock soon. Otherwise, get a hold of him. you know, it's pretty nice. The Fardriver, I will say, I think I'm docking at a point because it's huge. The Flipsky is going to get docked a point. I don't like how the wires connect. It's not bolt onto the device like Kelly or a Fardriver is. So they land about equal for install, in my opinion. If you're limited on space, you might want to look at the Flipsky over the Fardriver. If you're not worried about it and you're worried about having a tune going, maybe a Fardriver. Now, with the Fardriver, I will say, I think they are not managing the power as well. So a downfall to the Fardriver is I notice I'm getting less ride time out of the same battery with the same amp tune to line amps and phase amps. So I think I noticed like an 18 to 20 mile ride on the Fardriver, to where on the Flipsky I was getting about a 24 to 30 mile ride before I'm like completely dead at 63 volts, which is pretty much dying. So that's where we're kind of calling both of those. They both have their pros and cons, like I'm gonna say over and over. All right, so I know another big thing everyone's concerned about is top speeds. Now, the Fardriver, we are seeing more of a top speed out of. Now, talking with Jordan Davis, who's a little more educated on some of this stuff than I am, you know, we kind of realize that the Fardriver is not managing the power to the motor as well as like a Flipsky is, so it's not doing it as efficient, which I've noticed with my mileage, along with just being harsher on your motors. So that is a nice thing. Flipsky is treating your motor a little better the way it's giving it the power. Throttle response. Throttle response is a big one that I want to talk about. Like, a lot of times with a Vivor controller, people ask me if I get a new throttle from us, if it'll make it a whole lot better. I tell them no, unfortunately it's a cheap controller, just giving it a basic signal. So the Flipsky and the Fardriver are a huge step up from the Kelly. I used to run the Kellys because the throttle response felt good. Now after feeling these, I just feel like Kelly is terrible response on throttle response feel as far as that goes. And I just mean, like, if we give it a little throttle, am I getting a little? And if we crack it, is it going? So we have some cool settings with the Flipsky and the Fardriver, kind of letting us play with those throttle responses. And you know, that's great for wheelies. If you guys are seeing lately, I've been doing like one-hand wheelies on the Indian. That is because we have a Flipsky on that right now. And my throttle control compared to the Kelly, I can just purely trust actually running the throttle very precisely, compared to the Kelly is just not as smooth. So that's a huge thing. And the Fardriver, I would say, is right behind it. The Flipsky has I think 1 point higher than the Fardriver, just because it feels great. There is a nice setting to where you can set right to your response start point. You don't want to go too low. If you get a sleepy throttle, your bike will be taking off on you. But you know, you can really dial that down. I think you might be able to in Fardriver as well, but so that's nice. Kelly, we had to play with the TPS and it still wouldn't really dial where I wanted it. So throttle response on both these controllers is just amazing. You can kind of see I'm just really easy to do what I want there. So that's, to me, phenomenal. That's really what I like to see and I'm after. Now, so we got our power, she's cranking up. So I know I personally have not got my Flipsky tuned up to speed, but so talking about motors, like we say, the Fardriver is harsh on it, and it's pushing that motor to the absolute maximum when we talk about field weakening. And field weakening is going to take some of our amps and basically give us more RPMs and top speed once we get up to a higher speed, which we all want, of course. We're all into more top speed, but we want torque down low. So, you know, this is kind of a hard debate, to where some people don't think you should be running the field weakening as high on this motor and certain motors because you're going to have issues. So you are getting those max speeds from Fardriver because they are just maxing it out. All right, let's try a little roller here. I love it. right, so as far as power goes, I think they're pretty equal on power when you get the same tune. I'll throw a little clip up right now of side by side taking like a little bit of a same lap per se. One with the Fardriver, one's the Flipsky. I'll kind of throw it up so you can see, but okay, so right here we got on it last time. Oh, holy shit, like nothing. It's hard to tell, but that's a super steep hill. They're pretty equal, like powering up a hill, and kind of have the same results and feel to them as far as like getting up a hill and getting up power. The Fardriver maybe has a little more power feel, but again, it's because it's just throwing maximum amps and power at it, where the Flipsky I think is managing it a little bit better. Look guys, that's where we just came from. It's hard to say what one's better. That was hard on the camera. Yep, we just came all the way through there and looped down around there, came back up. Normally we ride over there. I take you guys up. So auto learn wise, I think they're both the same. Now, if you're unfamiliar with auto learn, a lot of people are unsure of the fact that with these more advanced controllers, Kelly, Fardriver, Flipsky, Jetpack, G11, ENC's controllers, probably, you all have to pair that motor with the controller. Now there's some sort of sequence normally to do that. Each one's a little different. The Kelly, you punch in a code. I'm going to say the Kelly's one of the least user-friendly. The Vivor, they're technically paired before they're all sold as a set. That's why you don't see them sold separately at all. But they're basically the same motor, so if you change them around, they tend to work. The Fardriver is pretty easy. You run an auto learn. I would say that one's probably the easiest. Make sure your chain's off. You spin that throttle. Wait for it to identify the throttle and the motor. It kind of reads everything it needs to and runs you through that, and you're kind of set up to go ahead and put settings in. Now, most of the times you're not ready to go out of the box. These settings are going to probably melt the motor. If you leave them, you kind of got to follow along with some tuning videos. So Flipsky's going to have a little bit more to it. You're going to go into the motor settings and kind of identify the motor, asking a few questions and then answering the right ones, which we'll have on some videos, or Brandon does. And then you're going to go in and dial in your throttle, basically go into the throttle and twist it all the way, let off to halfway and let off, and then right it. And then you're going to kind of have those identified to your controller specific. So it sounds a little complicated. It's not that big of a deal. A lot of people are getting intimidated by it or getting ripped off by people tuning it for them. So don't get too intimidated, but just know it does matter. You do have to have everything correct. And we'll do like a short of each detailed one of those videos more and more. I want to get more videos coming out of that. So another pro to Fardriver to me is that we have our 3-speed. For me, I have it on here right now. It's not active because we have a Flipsky in. So we have a 3-speed that we can set to what we want. I do like having a 3-speed switch. I can let friends or kids or whatever on the bike and have one setting tuned down. I can have one set for wheelies and one set to show you how fast electric is. So the Fardriver has that 3-speed setting, and the Flipsky does not really have a 3-speed switch option. There is some, you could make some settings and save them in the app. You'd have to get the app out and kind of click what setting you want. So I'm not super impressed with that. Hopefully down the road they get a 3-speed way of some sort. Jordan Davis is talking about doing it through the throttle to have a 2-speed. Another perk with Fardriver is you're going to notice like the DKD display that's non-active right now on this bike, and that is for the Fardriver. It will plug into the EMF wire harness, and you can just plug it all in and then do some settings on this to set your wheel size and stuff. We'll get some videos out on that as well. So I do like having a screen. I think it's pretty cool to see that screen going. So it is one of those things that's personal preference. If you like the DKD display, there's also another display, I'm forgetting the name right now, but we have the mounts is how these are hooked on our websites from Marcos. So those will work universally for that newer mount and this mount. So that's a pretty cool option. There's you know, few different things to look at of what way you're going to go. Another thing to talk about is regen. We don't have them set up yet, but for both of them I believe we can set up some sort of regen so that we could click a switch, and basically a momentary switch would slow us down, like as regen. But again, that's something that only is going to work with a freewheel, and I don't recommend not running a freewheel if you're on a Razor and a My 1020 motor, because you might overheat it faster. So something to think about. So overall feel, I'm going to have to say, I think the overall feel, I like the Flipsky the best. And it really is just kind of a nice, responsive feel. Now the settings, like I said, might take you a second more to really understand, and hopefully I can really dial those in better for you guys to see. But I do think it's a better, they have more precise settings, they have more to mess with, they have a lot of innovative things going on behind VSEC. So it's just it's a really good option. I don't think Fardriver's a bad option either. I think Kelly's a bad option. I have a stack of them laying in my garage. I have some brand new in the box that we discontinued because I would feel bad to sell them. So, yeah, it's just kind of, how's it going? But yeah, it's just one of those things that is kind of, it's a tough debate right now. Now, I know a lot of people ask me about the little bit controller, whatever electro encoded controller is. I'm really not educated. I'm just going to kind of leave it no comments. They do their own thing. I don't know if you know me, you know I'm not a fan. But either way, you're going to have to do motor identification and want to understand your settings. So don't think you're getting something nice if you don't have to mess with the settings as much. You're kind of just getting uneducated. My perspective of these electric bikes is it's really cool to be able to have these settings and have different options to be able to say, hey, I want a little more juice right there, or I want my throttle not as snappy right there, or more snappy. So if I want it to pop me up right there, we could. So I think you're missing out on the beauties of electric if you're not understanding your settings and tuning and just getting into the whole thing. And it's really not super crazy as long as you can kind of follow along and don't get ahead of yourself and make sure you're understanding correctly. The more you understand the controller, the more you're really going to understand the rest of the bike, meaning the motor and the battery. What battery do I need for what amp outputs? What motor do I want for what kind of speeds, and what's it going to take? A lot of that's going to be answered by understanding what we're giving it out of our controller with our settings. So I think it's a great thing to educate yourself on these controllers and really figure out what you're after, and figure out what pros and cons you're personally after, what you're going to be running with it long time, what your long-term goals are. If you're starting out with a basic set from Vivor, but down the road you'd like to get a Flipsky or a Fardriver and amp it up a little more, get a little better throttle response. And then, you know, are you going to want to upgrade that, and is your battery going to be capable of it? So that's something I tell a lot of people: pick your battery first and make sure it's capable. But you can kind of grow into your battery more, and that's why, you know, a lot of our EMF batteries are 120 amp continuous at the least on our website, because I think a lot of people get into Vivor, they understand the bit of what's at the potential, and they're ready to go in more, and then their battery's kind of limiting them. So it's just something good to think about. You want to think about your amps. Right there we're pulling 100 amps, like 100 amps continuous right here this whole time for sure. So, you know, if you want that, it's something to think about. Got some garage sales. Bad day for a garage sale. Feel bad. But let me know what you guys think. Questions, things I'm missing, and you know, I'm sure there's something. For top speeds, I think the Fardriver is right around 48 miles per hour with a stock B1 sprocket setup and motor. For the Flipsky, I think it's right around 45 miles per hour if you run the same amount of field weakening. Again, just kind of like stressing that motor out. So, you know, if you're looking for that top speed, know what motor you're after so that you can kind of plan accordingly and not fry your motors because you're maxing it out. So. All right, so I do want to talk about that little scoring chart that I did and on the final result. So just overall, the Kelly is basically disqualified because it's not running with the motor and it's just lacking some options, so it's out. The Fardriver, I think a final we scored at a 79 out of 100, and the Flipsky we scored at an 82 out of 100. So looking into each one of those, how they got those scores, we're going to go ahead and see that we have our install. The Fardriver got a number 7, the Flipsky got an 8. I say that because the Fardriver is huge. The only reason it's 1 point below, it just has a lot of wires and it's just large in size. So that's why it's 1 point down. The auto learning, we have the Fardriver at a 9 and the Flipsky at an 8. The Fardriver is just one auto learn for controller and the motor. The Flipsky, we have to do the auto learn with the motor and with the throttle. It's a few extra questions and settings, which is actually better and more precise, but it is a little bit more on the overwhelming side if you're super new to this. So then we go to tuning. Tuning, we have the Fardriver at a 7, the Flipsky at a 6, and again, just kind of because the Fardriver I think is kind of one list straightforward and it's easier to follow along with like videos of how-tos. The Flipsky has a few different things to jump all over with a lot more precise settings, like I said, which can get a little tricky if you're not following along perfectly. So number 4, app user friendly, we have both tied at a number 7. I think the apps are pretty user-friendly. Again, it's just kind of overwhelming to look at. Fardriver has a little Chinese going on, so people get kind of distracted by that. Flipsky, you know, just has a lot going on, so we'll just give them both a 7 on that. Throttle response, now that's a great one. Fardriver we have at a 9. I think it's just phenomenal compared to a Kelly. Next to a Vivor, not even comparable. Flipsky we have at a 10. The Flipsky, you guys see me doing those one-handers. It's just awesome throttle response. Feels great. So overall feel, you know, we're talking more like, how does that feel cranking up and down some hills, doing some little hill climbs, going up some steep stuff, cranking some wheelies, all that good stuff. How does it feel? And the Fardriver I got an 8 at, and the Flipsky a 9. The Fardriver is just 1 point under because you can just feel a little grindiness to the motor. I think it throws it a little harsher towards that motor, but overall it feels pretty good. Torque and power, we have them both tied at a 9. These things are absolute animals. Again, as long as you have the battery that can throw out the amps to give that controller, they throw down, you know, they throw out some power. So really both tied at a 9 there. Feel really good. So top speed, you know, that's a big one everyone's concerned about. I think they're pretty close to equal. The Fardriver getting 1 point higher at a 9 with the Flipsky at an 8. That Fardriver, like we said, is just throwing everything at it and giving that motor everything she can do. So she is getting that top speed out there, and I think he probably, you know, they're pretty much equal, honestly, but just a matter of the settings. So battery efficiency, I think that's a really important one. The Fardriver I scored at a 6, where the Flipsky really came up and scored at a 10. The Fardriver, I noticed I was losing power faster and, you know, just kind of getting more of an 18-mile ride to 20-mile ride, depending on how I was riding and where I'm going, to where the Flipsky, I was making it like 24, 25 miles and still had 30% battery life left when I pulled her in. So we're just seeing that extra mileage. I actually went back out on the 30 and got close to 30 miles out of the 24 AH battery on that Bamoto B1. So, you know, that's big. Range is a big one here. We all don't want to be stuck walking these things home. So I think Flipsky just honestly manages that power a lot better and, you know, throws the motor in more efficient power. So last we have everything. And when I say everything in general, I mean, like we talked about the Flipsky not having a 3-speed switch to plug in where the Fardriver does. That's kind of going to come up on 1 point over, where the Fardriver got an 8 and the Flipsky got a 7. Just because I think in general the Fardriver has that 3-speed option. It has a little more plug-in, easy options for me to sell plug-and-play harnesses or parts to, and just kind of plug into it and then change the setting. Pretty simple, and run with it. I don't know. It's again personal preference, guys. This is totally just my specific thought of running both of these controllers and trying to gauge my best input on it. So again, hopefully that helps you guys. It's a tough choice. I think going either one of those routes is an awesome option. I just really feel bad for anyone getting a Kelly. Just, guys, please stop buying Kellys. They were cool 2020. We're 4 years later. We're almost halfway through this year already now, and it's just, hopefully Kelly can, you know, get it together, but they're outdated. They really are just falling behind the bar. All right, so hopefully this can kind of help people pick what direction they want to go. I know it's still a tough choice. So for those tests on both those controllers, we had it set to 100 line amps coming from the battery, and then we had it set to 250 phase amps from the battery to the motor. So I'm trying to keep those equal on the amps being drawn from the battery so that it was a close comparison video and giving them each a fair chance to put side by side. We will be doing this on the Razors next, going through the My 1020 motors, the FW11 and the KRV5 like we talked about. So some of you guys know my stunt build is still getting built. It's still kind of a tough decision if I'm going Flipsky or Fardriver on that, to be totally honest, because of the pros and cons each way. But probably Flipsky, we'll see though. I just think it's kind of the superior route. Another thing to keep in mind when you're looking at these controllers is to make sure that your battery is able to give out the continuous amps that these controllers need. These controllers need higher amps to be able to perform. So you want to make sure that you're not stressing your battery, overdrawing amps or maxing the amps out of that battery. So again, we talk about having higher continuous amps. So if I'm running 120 continuous amp BMS with the battery, I like to be running 100 amps out of the controller for line amps to kind of give myself a little barrier and not be maxing everything out. Hope that helps you guys. Everyone take care. Ride safe.